agitated for all kinds of positive reasons, and maybe also for, because of all the negativity that happens all around us. And because Islam is so newsworthy, 2 years ago, Times Higher Education Supplement came out with a report on the front page, and I read it 3 times. Every 7.5 minutes, there is something on Islam, just in English. And think about other languages. It could be a video, it could be a book, it could be an article, and most of that is negative. I'm not being defensive. I'm just telling you that it is a problem. I'm happy that in Pakistan, I mean, we heard all the sad stories and some positive as well. That this country and the people there, under 65, under 70 million people, find themselves in a kind of nutcracker situation. Whether you look at it from a security viewpoint or you look at it from an ideological viewpoint. There's no contention about Pakistan, why Pakistan came into being. I think the debate is what kind of Pakistan we want. I mean, that is real. And this is where I think Islam, ethnicity, caste, gender, human rights, the rights of minorities, Muslim minorities, non-Muslim, become very important. When I look at Pakistan's literature, it amazes me. Maybe this is the very testing time for all of us, as Muslims, and especially for Pakistanis. And lots of wonderful literature is being created. I know many of you read those novels, short stories, Asad, Mohsin Hamid, all that. This is actually the flowering of Pakistani literature. And it's not just English, Urdu as well. And in Sindhi. And I'm sure in Pashto and Punjabi. And people only talk about media, we've got 75 channels and this also. There are chattering Pakistanis, which gives me lots of hope. And when sometimes, I go to NCA or I watch, Geo 824, which is ARG, and I look at people like you, creating this beautiful music, appropriating the history, the culture. I know you're uncomfortable with history, but ethos of that place, the rural setting, the tribal setting, the urban setting, the home, mother, grandmother, all those things there, young people like you appropriate. That gives me lots of hope. I'm a student of history. I look back at this area, Indus Valley situation, read the Greek historians, read the Persian historians. This is where lots of things happen. I mean, Musharraf makes a nonsense of himself and he says, oh, come to Pakistan, that's where happenings is happening. No. In history, this area has defined South Asia. It has always been turbulent. I'm not romanticizing it. If you get a chance, read Rig Veda. Long before Hinduism is defined. Rig Veda is all about Indus Valley, the region that we are talking about. River Indus, Sindhu is mentioned 95 times. Ganga is not mentioned at all. This is the region where civilizations evolved. Hinduism evolved. Buddhism evolved. Zoroastrianism prospered. And this is where Islam came. And this is where Sikhism evolved. Very plural. Not just from security viewpoint. Look, when we said Afghanistan, maybe China would attack Afghanistan. Why? This is the region. This is the area. 19th century, I'm doing a book on Pashtuns and the invasions of the tribal region in Afghanistan. People writing about Pashtun people, especially about Afridis. These Afridis are the 12th lost tribe to Islam. All kind of anthropologists fascinated by trans-Indus community. So when I look at Pakistan now, or Indus Valley now, sometimes it doesn't shock me. Maybe that is our history. You don't see that kind of history in the Gangetic Valley. You don't see that kind of history in Dakhan, southern India. You don't see that history in Bengal. Because by the time these movements reach there, they're settled, they're acculturated. So that's why I think Indus Valley is very old, ancient. We have not been able even to decipher the language of Indus Valley, or Jodhara, or whatever. The archaeologists are working on it. We don't know much about past, always. But what I know is, it is always turbulent. It is always creative. It's always youthful. And we saw this youth today, full of energy, full of ideas, full of contention. I'm not saying it should become grey and old, but it will remain turbulent. Maybe this is our heritage. Maybe that's why Pakistan is so plural. We are the India. It's sad that our textbooks disown that Indianness. We are also part of Central Asia. Whether you look at our names, our culture, our food, we are also part of this great medieval Islamic civilization called Persian age. Even Muhammad Iqbal, only 70 years ago, was writing in Farsi. And before that, our Shakespeare in Urdu, or maybe a personality bigger than Shakespeare, with lots of humor, Mirza Ghalib, when he saw the destruction of Delhi and all that, and he said, read my Persian poetry. Beguzar az majmue Urdu man ke berange manas. Forget about my Urdu collection. It's colorless. If you want to read Ghalib, read Farsi. So this region was part of that Persian culture. So all these things, all these things are part of our heritage. I think we need to look at this history in a very creative way. And this is where in the 19th century, long before in any other part of the Muslim world, including the Ottoman Empire, this whole debate that we are discussing today began. How do you define yourself as a Muslim, as an Indian, or whatever you are? Your regional identity, your ethnic identity, your Ummah identity. And this is people like Jamaluddin Afghani had history, coming from Afghanistan, living in India, going to Egypt, talking to the Caliph, eventually coming to Paris. He influenced a whole generation of people who said we could gain things from the West without losing our own Islamic identity. And then you had Sir Sayyid Ahmad Khan, who said, look, first we should put our house in order through education, through knowledge. Build up our schools. We can't go on fighting a powerful, modern Western civilization. We don't want to Westernize ourselves, but we need to modernize. He was very clear about the difference between modernization and Westernization. And then comes the generation of Muhammad Iqbal. And I can read something from Muhammad Iqbal. People read his poetry a lot. I will invite you to read his lectures, The Reconstruction of Islamic Thought. Small book, read it. He says, quote, for European culture, this is why I have difficulty when you explain Western culture. Because I thought we were talking about universality. He said, for European culture, on its intellectual side, is only a further development of some of the most important phases of the culture of Islam. So to Iqbal, Islamic culture didn't end with Bosphorus. It was universal. And that's where I think Spain, Sicily, all these places. And somebody mentioned Ibn Khaldun. The task, Iqbal says in another lecture, the task before the modern Muslim is therefore immense. He has to rethink the whole system of Islam without completely breaking with the past. So you have to be part of many worlds. You can't just pigeonhole yourself in the past or in the present. And this is the challenge. And I think, especially after 9/11, we are in a pressure cooker situation. But something good is coming out as well. If you look at the negative side, many negative things are happening. Sadly, schools are being torched. More than 200 schools have been torched. In a very cosmopolitan place like Sawa, I've been there so many times. My family has been there so many times. I couldn't believe that this was happening in Sawa. Maybe it's happening out of anger, maybe it's happening out of frustration, maybe it's happening out of misunderstanding, maybe it's happening out of regional issues, maybe it's happening what Khalid Abul Fazl says, the great theft of our heritage. But anyway, the only course, Iqbal says, the only course open to us is to approach modern knowledge with a respectful but independent attitude, and to appreciate the teachings of Islam in the light of that knowledge, even though we may be led to differ from those who have gone before us. And mind you, Iqbal was the first Muslim writer, philosopher, who used the term civil society. And for the last 3 years, we've been talking about civil society in Pakistan as an area of hope. The lawyers, the journalists, the young people, the women rights activists, the human rights activists. The people who stood for judiciary, they were actually standing for a new Pakistan.